Right. See, yeah, being live streamed on YouTube. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, sister. Hey, Caroline. How you doing, sister?
I'm very well, and Abdi, yourself?
Fantastic.
Good.
Hello, everybody.
Lima, ¿cómo está?
Va bien, gracias. Good to see you, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Andrea.
Hi, Carol.
Hello, hello.
Okay, Skylar, so I put that information into WhatsApp for you. Good evening, everyone.
Good
Thanks, Susan.
evening.
Okay, I guess we're gonna start. And for anyone that's just joining, again, good evening to every one of you, sisters, brothers, and comrades. Thank you for joining us again. I know it's a different occasion. We're not face to face, but I have to say with much appreciation that you're still able to tune in to the meeting. And I'm gonna ask before we start for everyone to mute themselves. Before we go any further, I'm gonna ask Sister Jinky to do the harassment statement.
Good evening, everyone. The policy on harassment. It is the policy of the Toronto and York Region Labor Council to declare an absolute opposition to discrimination or harassment. Oh, I think I'm reading the wrong. Oh, to ignore discrimination or harassment is to condone acts of the harasser and further penalize the victim. Union solidarity is based on the principle that we are all brothers and sisters and comrades, and that we are equal. Discrimination or harassment erodes this principle because it assumes that one union member some union members are inferior. Discrimination and harassments are expressions of power or perceived power and superiority. It is intended that the policy send a clear message to the harasser that their actions will not be tolerated, and to empower victims with the support of their union sisters, brothers, and comrades.
Thank you, sister. Next, we'll have the land acknowledgement from Brother Jeff.
Good evening, all. We are meeting on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, which was subject to the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississauga, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of friendship, peace, and respect. Thank you.
Thank you. So Susan, can you go through the function, the Zoom?
And you know, most of us are old hats at Zoom, but we sometimes still forget to mute ourselves unless we are going to be speaking. And then, of course, the problem that some of us have, which is remembering to unmute ourselves when it is time to speak. So make sure you make use of your mute button. If you are going to speak during the statement or during the union reports, please raise your hand by going down to your reaction button and looking for the little function that actually says raise hand. If you just put the waving hand up on your screen, we may not be able to see it. And if you're on your phone, you can push *9 to raise your hand. Finally, please feel free to make use of the chat function to share ideas, as long as we're not interrupting other speakers and things like that too much. So have a great meeting, everyone. Talk to you later.
Thank you. So before we go any further, just want to know if we have any first-time attendant. Anyone here for the first time, you could put their hand up by pressing their, I think it's is that the blue? The blue hand, sorry, different device.
Yeah,
Is
if
there
you go
any first-
to your, if you go down to your reaction button along the bottom of your screen and hit the raise hand function, it used to be blue, now it's yellow. And I see, Andrea, there is one speaker.
Okay, is that Michael? Michael, is that Thompson? I just see a little bit of it. Can you say your name and your union?
Yeah, I'm Mitch. I'm with UFCW, 1006A.
Okay, welcome. Is there anyone else? Okay,
Yeah, it's Fitzgerald Steele. I'm at local 4948 library.
welcome.
Okay.
Welcome. Okay, so I hope this is not your first and last. We hope to see you at the next meeting. It's always great having at least people that are under the same roof with the same goal in mind for us to at least common goal and able to plan and take on different action plans. So welcome. Next, before we go further, we are going to ask for approval of the minutes. You would have gotten that in your email before the meeting, and we are going to do an electronic vote on that. So is that in the chat too, Susan? I hope you already get a chance to review your minutes.
I think Jennifer is going to put the minutes in the chat, and I guess we need a motion from someone for that.
Seconded. Chef move it, I seconded.
Okay.
So the vote has been posted. Those of you who are on phones won't be able to participate in this. The voting is only available to those who are online. And we will leave it open for another 15 seconds or so. And another 5 seconds or so. All right, we'll close the poll and share the results.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. And we're going to move on to the credential report. Brother Doug, are you?
QP local 21281, one delegate. QP local 4400, 47 delegates. ETFO York Region, 4 delegates. OPSU local 503, 1 delegate. UFCW local 1068, 1 delegate. I so move.
Thank you. Again, we're going to ask for the poll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, we're just going to, I'm just going to try and relaunch the poll. I'm just having some trouble with that. And
Can you do anything?
sorry, I'm going to have to, there. I'm gonna,
Yep.
I just relaunched it. Yeah, I just relaunched it.
Okay.
It appeared briefly and then disappeared again.
Okay, I'll relaunch it one more time. Do you see it? Yeah, people are voting. Maybe 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pass.
Thank you. Okay. So before we go any further in this agenda, I think it's really important that we take some time as we are struggling with this pandemic, and at the same time we want to pause to remember those its co-workers, our family members that and also for workplace accident that died. Co-workers are family members that died through COVID-19 and also co-workers that died from workplace accident. So can we take a moment of silence, please? Thank you. Up next, any strike report? Okay. Seeing none. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the upcoming. Someone could mute. Yes, so we're going to move on to next urgent call that's coming up for the November 6th. This is the climate change rally that's happening on the 6th, 1 p.m. at Queen's Park, and we're encouraging everyone to come out and support, and also to speak out. I know with the timing and there's also concern with social distance, and so we see a lot of things that's happening right now, and we shouldn't use this as a way to keep away from letting our voice heard and marching out for these actions that continue even though this crisis is happening. So we encourage you to put on your mask, and if you have to do a little social distance, let's do that. But we still need to go out and make sure that we are standing up for these causes. So before we go further, Jennifer will lead us into one of the videos. We have short videos that we're putting out on Facebook also.
We are in a climate, economic, and racial crisis. We are Indigenous and we are rising, and we will continue to stand up for our rights and for the climate and for these lands.
It's time for an economy that works for us all, that's built on something sustainable, not just policing, militarization, and fossil fuels.
There ain't no canopy.
Okay, and I'm going to ask Sister Carolyn Egan to introduce our next speaker. Hi, Carolyn.
Andrea, you want me to speak now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I was just getting an update from Susan. It appears Ali, who is our speaker, Ali Rougeau, is not yet here. She is from Fridays for Future, and she's on her way. I think she's at a climate action right now. And so I'm suggesting what we might do is go on to the executive board statement, and then she can come on and speak. And I'll just say that Ali is a young activist who was one of the founders of Fridays for Future here in Toronto. I've been able to work with her for the last few years, just a wonderful, wonderful young activist who just represents so many. And so she's going to speak about the issues that are confronting us. And I just want to thank Labor Council and all the environmental groups and Urban Alliance on Race Relations, Idle No More, and so many of the groups. We formed a coalition just about 5 weeks ago when we realized that no individual group was taking on doing a rally in this city to join the global climate justice rallies happening around the COP26, literally in most every nation in the world. So she's been a part of that. We've been a part of it, and she'll give a great rundown of what the issues are and why it's so important for trade unions to be a part of this. So I suggest we go forward with the executive statement.
She's
now,
here
and
now.
then she'll come. Oh, all right. Well, then she's here now. Okay. Well then, Hallie, how are you?
Good timing.
Okay. Well then, I'll simply say I was in a process of introducing you, and I'll just say again that you're just an extraordinary activist, and we've had the opportunity to work together for numbers of years now, and I think it's very inspiring to see so many young people just take up the mantle and fight the good fight here, and why trade unions have to be involved as well. So you take it away.
I really
Welcome,
appreciate
Ali.
that. Thank you. Thanks very much. And apologies for the delay. And if I look a little frozen, we were just outside doing a demonstration around Minister Freeland's office, and I ran back in. But I'm really glad to be here with you all. Thank you for giving me a bit of your time and for listening. So as it was mentioned, I organize with Fridays for Future Toronto, which is the youth climate strikes that have been happening. And I also work at Environmental Defense on the topic of the just and equitable transition for all. And so it's really in these two roles that I have the pleasure to speak to you tonight. And I'm really here to formally invite you to come out on Saturday at Queen's Park for a rally that demands climate justice. I'll set a bit of the context, and perhaps you've spoke about it already, but I'll give some reminders that right now we have COP26 happening, which is this big UN conference on climate change. And this weekend is going to end the halfway mark. And I think it's important to note that because, there's going to be a lot of promises made in the beginning, and then they kind of lose momentum. They get comfortable. They're probably just having a beer in Glasgow. And we want to really mark that day, the halfway mark, and say you still have a lot more promises to make and a lot more commitments to make. So that's kind of the context in which the rally is happening. Canada went with a large delegation, and so far they've done a few good things. They've announced that they'll stop funding fossil fuels abroad, but they really have not taken the scale of action on climate that keeps us safe, essentially. And so obviously there's going to be protests in Glasgow by Glasgow activists, by folks in Glasgow from Labour, but there's totally an insufficient amount of pressure that they feel from home. And so what we have to do right now is keep the pressure on at home so that they feel it all the way in Glasgow. So what this rally is going to do on Saturday is put our demands back on the agenda. It's going to get some media, it's going to get some social media presence, it's going to get good visuals, it's going to get our demands, and that's really going to put us back on the agenda. It's also going to allow us to speak with Canadians that have kind of tuned out, that have kind of decided, let's leave the politicians do their thing in Glasgow and let's just focus on us. It's going to really put it back there. And we know that politicians perform better when they know that we're watching their moves. So I think this is kind of another rationale for this rally. And it's mostly an amazing opportunity for us to build solidarity and power across our movements. And I think that last one is really what motivates me the most, because I know that the next few years of fight when it comes to climate action, we're going to need a lot of solidarity. We're going to have to be there for each other. I want to talk about that a little bit more. The coalition that's putting together this rally is a coalition of younger folks, of parents, of grandparents, of workers, of Indigenous peoples. And it's important that we gather around and that we have agreed on some demands. Demands are that Canada has to do its fair share. It's that Canada has to keep fossil fuels in the ground, but also that Canada has to guarantee a just, equitable transition for all workers, for all communities across this entire country. It also needs to recognize Indigenous sovereignty and respect Indigenous laws, traditions, knowledge. And it also has to commit to climate justice. So that's a part that you might have heard a lot more, but Canada is just not giving sufficient resources to global South countries that also need to develop in a green way. I think the fact that we are speaking about the just transition is where I hope we can continue to have the conversation, because I'm a little worried when I watch COP right now. COP right now, so this whole conference has been about announcing big things. We're phasing out of this, we're doing this, we're getting rid of it. And I haven't heard about people. I really haven't heard Canada saying, we're gonna support our people through this. And I'm getting seriously worried that this government has decided that they wanna be the climate champions. They wanna be the people that have saved the planet, but they have set up no plan for workers and for communities to actually transition to the safe planet that they promise. I'm genuinely worried that that's what's going to happen. There's going to be an elite that's going to take the credit for quote unquote saving us. And at the same time, they're not going to set up communities for success. And I'm really calling on us to do better between us youth climate activists who are demanding climate action, and to really build relationships with labor folks to say, no, we're not asking just climate action. We're asking it with this just transition plan. We're asking it with a support system during the transition, with good jobs, with well-paid jobs and unionized ones, as well as a support system while people transition. And so that's what I'm hoping we start with the rally on Saturday. We meet there, we get our energy, we build trust together, and then we continue, because throughout the next few years, really, we're gonna need to try to make sure that every piece of climate action is just, and that every piece of economic plan that Canada comes up with is climate compatible. So that's what I'm hoping for us to talk about today. I don't know if you have time or want to ask anything or any questions, but otherwise, I really hope to see you there demanding a safe future for us all. And I'm really grateful to be here with you tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ali. It's great, and I'm hoping that everyone here will be able to join you, but I know for sure I'll be there, and let's see before the night ends. So Jennifer, I will ask again for today.
Toronto's labor movement has been fighting for economic justice, for social justice, for racial justice, and in the last 2 decades for climate justice as well.
We need a job-rich transition to a low-carbon economy. No extraction on Indigenous lands. There's a duty to consult.
This is our planet. This is our future. Young and old, we can make this change. Get involved.
Thank you. Thank you. So Jinky, I'm gonna ask you to do the honor here. Our executive board also had discussion and wanted to support the rally. So Jinky, take over.
Ali, thank you for addressing us this evening. The work that you and your group is doing is inspiring, and we are here to support. The labor movement is here to support you and your organization. And so we would like to bring forward with a board recommendation that we donate to the work that they've been doing, a $300 donation. And I ask you guys here today, all the delegates, to support that donation. Not only support this donation, but also show up on November 6th. I can tell you that me and my littles will be there, and we'll be waving our union flag, building solidarity with you and your organization.
Thank you. So we're going to ask, the poll is up, and we're asking for you to support this motion.
I'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. So this is passed. And back over to you, Jennifer.
There is no more time to wait.
Communities deserve justice.
The labor movement knows the power of collective action and mobilization.
So the time has come to bargain for better sustainability.
This is an issue that affects us all. We all need to get involved.
Who's got the power? What kind of power? People power.
Hey, thank you. So we are doing everything to make sure that we're actually luring you out there. Okay, so we know it's going to be chilly, but as usual, we like to go out the 4 seasons of the year. So get dressed and let us go out there. We owe it to each other. I know I went out on the end of September with the student, and even though we were there and the large turnout that was there, it was hard to tell of who was there from labor. Yes, labor was there, but this time around we're saying it's our turn to make sure that we are going out there to link with the next generation. Bring your flags. Let us go out and do it. This is our turn. We have a executive board statement, and I hope you also got a chance to go through that. It's climate justice is union business. And I'm gonna also ask for speakers on this statement. Any speaker?
For those who would like to speak, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. Use the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, please press *9 to show that you'd like to speak to the statement.
Oops, I think I just missed someone.
Oh, I see Carolyn has her hand up.
Well, I'll speak because there were no other speakers, but I have no doubt that everyone supports this. But I think it's incredibly important that the Toronto and York Region Labour Council be on record at this particular moment in history, saying what we have to say about the need to tackle climate change in a way that is just and provides the dignity that Indigenous peoples need across this country, that those seeking jobs need across this country, and workers who may be displaced as time goes on. We have to have a seat at the table. And I think, if you've been listening at all to what's going on at Glasgow, there are some things that are going in the right direction, but we also know the people who are there representing our governments are the same people who have been putting the austerity agenda on our backs, who have been taking away the right to strike, who have been not friends of working people. And so we have to use the collective power that's ours to really force the Liberal government in Ottawa, every level of government, to push through what has to be done to provide the money for the infrastructure that's going to create the new green jobs, to support the struggles of Indigenous people for sovereignty, to support community benefits and jobs for racialized workers and transition jobs for those now in the fossil fuel industry. Certainly we have them in my union and many of unions you do. So this is hugely, hugely important that we step up and not just make a statement, but be out there so the Liberal government in Ottawa, every government sees that it's not just young people, it's not just the environmentalists who've been doing this for years, and it's not only the Indigenous people who are giving such leadership, that the trade unions are part and parcel. We're in the center of this movement, and our demands have to be paid attention to. We cannot lose the concept of just transition. And if we're not out there, if we're not saying what has to be said, and if we're not making it clear to the Liberal government, not at every level of government, that we have demands that have to be looked at. They cannot overlook us. So I think this is hugely important for our movement, for our fellow workers, for the climate as a whole, for everyone who is affected. And I won't go on at length about, I think we all know that countries like Bangladesh going below water level, the Solomon Islands, so many, and the fires in the West, et cetera, et cetera. So I just implore people, do what you can, be out there and build this consciousness in your workplaces and in your union. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think I see Brother Nigel hand up.
Greetings. Thank you, comrade. Thank you, President Babington. I am also rising to speak to this. My colleague, obviously before, Carolyn spoke directly about all the things that need to happen. Toronto York Labor Council for decades have been doing this work. Carolyn and I co-chaired the Good Green Jobs for All conference back in 2008, 2009. Many of you, there's many of you that were there for that. And so we know that our voice, labor voice, is crucial for this. And it's so wonderful to see Ali here amongst us here in labor. Andrea was there for her conference and spoke at that. I was there at Queen's Park and just spoke about how important it was for labor to be part of there, but we didn't have the flags. We didn't have all of the people in the audience that needed to be there. And that's why I implore all of us to please make the time, bring your friends, bring your family, grab your auntie, grab your uncles, grab grandma, bring you, dress warm, and let's all be out there with our flags saying loud and clear that we can build this new green economy that's good for everyone, that leaves no worker behind, that raises all the boats, you know, and that we have to create a new green economy that that's not like the old gray economy. It's one that creates good jobs for all, you know, a decent job, a unionized job. The only way that happens is if we together, the working class people of this city, come together and rise up and say enough is enough. We demand that we create a good green economy for all. So hopefully we'll see you all there November 6th. There is going to be music. It's going to be fun for the family. So just bring your children and looking forward to seeing you all. And I really hope that we can pass this motion tonight. Thank you very much, President Babington.
Thank you. Next, Brother David, I see your hand up. Thank you.
Yes. At the OFL convention this afternoon, there was a resolution with regard to taking action on climate change. And while I urge everyone to support this, I think that we should be bearing something in mind. The most obvious thing about this entire situation is there is no such thing as any national sovereignty on the air. No one can say it's Canadian air or American air or Russian air or whatever. So this is a problem that is going to affect all of us in one way or another. It's an international humanity problem. And the planet will be fine, but we need a place to live if we make our own world unlivable. And all this has been said. But it occurred to me as I heard the resolution, and I'm seeing something similar with this resolution, that I don't see an alternative to engaging with governments. I mean, this is not something the labor movement, shall we say, can solve. We have to participate. But I think that we need to engage with our governments. I don't know that that's entirely clear, but just to read, well, we should urge the governments. Well, I think that we should mean each one of us. We should be talking to the politicians and saying, this is not something that has a political solution. This needs political cooperation. And what we've got to do is individually show up if we're able to. Unfortunately, I'm working on Saturday and I can't be there at the rally, but I certainly want to be there. But the other side is that we're going to have to take some individual initiative on this to urge our governments to act at every level, to do whatever they can and impress on them. Look, you've got to start looking at the broader agenda of being a democracy that is representative and that represents all of the people that are in the area where you've been elected. And going up to the international level, and now we have the COP, and I'm saying, well, that's good. And even if the United States can say that it's leading, fair enough, but the If you want to pat yourself on the back, good for you. But what we need is that everyone is going to have to get to work on this. And it starts with all of us literally at the grassroots saying, governments, you've got to just do this. Let's get on with it.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Brother Steve Shalon.
Carolyn and I have been part of the November 6 coalition, and it's a broad-based coalition of unionist young people. Some of the environmental groups, Greenpeace, Toronto Environmental Alliance, 350.org. I also wanted to bring to people's attention, Brother John Cartwright advised us today of a document that's been signed and supported by about more than a dozen governments, as well as the European Commission. It's a 6-point plan that really zeroes in on support for workers in the transition to new jobs, promoting social dialogue and stakeholder engagement, economic strategies to transition us from a carbon-intensive economy to a net zero future. That includes local, inclusive, and decent work, et cetera, et cetera. So there is momentum behind just transition. Lots of promises are being made in Glasgow, including from our own Canadian government. And as the previous speaker said, I think it's up to us to hold our governments to these promises and make sure that it's not just commitments, but it's in implementation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I hope. Okay, so before I ask for the vote, just to go again, just to remind the Executive Board recommends that the Labour Council resolve to encourage delegates and other Labour Council members to participate in the November 6, 2021 rally at Queen's Park for Climate Justice Now. 2, call on affiliates to adopt the Canadian Labour Congress Climate Action Agenda. 3, call on affiliates to work with the Labour Education Centre to develop a union management emission reduction committee in their workplace. And 4, demand the federal government enact effective, meaningful, just transition legislation. 5, call on affiliates to work to defeat Ford's Conservative government and elect progressive MPPs in June 2022 provincial election to ensure that climate justice is given priority as part of a just recovery. 6, demand that municipal government implement climate justice plan and lobby all levels of government to ensure that municipalities have the necessary funding to do so. Thank you, and I'm going to ask for the poll that we can conduct the vote. Thank you. This vote is carried. And as we hear from all the speakers about the urgency and so important that we're not just supporting the statement, but making sure that we are going out, taking action, whatever it takes to make sure that it's not a piece of paper we're looking on, but we are able to see the result and justice that come out of this. And I just want to take you back a little bit. For some of you that might have been on the Days of Action, the 25 years anniversary of the Days of Action that was put on Brother Cartwright also did the MC along with myself. And we had a really good turnout, but it's just draw so close to home as to when we're looking back at 25 years ago, all the issues that was on the ground, whether it's an education fight, whether it's healthcare fight, and not to mention the fight that was on the ground in communities. And the only way that we were able to tell the story now, and some things might look like it's still the same, but definitely not, when we know what changes came out of that was having not just labor on one side, but labor and community came together to send that message to the Irish government that they're not going to take it. And as workers, we stand for labor and we stand for community. Now, where we are, 25 years later, we're still here under attack. We're still here under attack with the same conservative government. And before I go any further, I want to share just when you're thinking of if this is too difficult for us to take on, I'm going to show this video again for people that was there and a part of this, and for anyone that came 25 years later, just to get a sense of what was happening. So Jennifer, I'll ask if you are able to just to show the video again one more time.
So the momentum for the Days of Action came out of the Mike Harris government and his common sense revolution.
Thinking back to the events from the time that Harris took office, the changes that happened in such a short space of time were absolutely unprecedented, and not a group was left unscathed by that.
He cut welfare overnight. Many people found themselves homeless and on the streets. He stopped the subway expansion, housing co-ops and social housing, restricting the ability to organize, big cuts to workers' compensation, to education, axing employment equity, and of course, childcare.
So everybody was busy fighting their own battles and getting discouraged.
No more homeless.
Because
no more people
we realized that Harris's agenda had really been patterned on clients out of Alberta at the time. So we asked Sean Gillen, who was the president of the Calgary Labour Council, to come and speak to our Labour Council. And what he had to say just horrified us. Because while we knew about all the cuts, what we weren't anticipating and had difficulty believing could happen was the loss of democracy.
We really had to stand up for the world that we wanted to live in.
That's when I think a lot of the labor movement in Ontario began to think, oh, we got to fight back here.
And so we decided to organize.
Sort of early in '96, we started to lobby the OFL to do something.
They determined that the way to organize was to hold days of action in various cities around Ontario. So London, Peterborough, Hamilton, culminating in shutdown of the city of Toronto and a big rally at the end of October in 1996.
We were a community partner with the Metro Network for Social Justice. And then we spread out from there and began to pick out all kinds of other groups that were not at that stage members of the Metro Network, and they weren't trade union groups, but yet they too had been hurt by Harris's cuts, and they were more than willing to get on board. I couldn't tell you how many groups we had at the end.
So we had 2 months to do outreach, to do media, to prepare materials. We had materials in many languages, I forget how many.
At least 30 languages.
We had an office floor filled with 70 staff who were working night and day. We had people working with community organizations and trade unions to help them understand what we were trying to do and to work with them to create their own actions in the week building up to the actual shutdown on the Friday and the rally on the Saturday. It was an immense organizing feat. So So the fact that there was a woman leading the Labour Council in and of itself was a wonderful thing. But the fact that I was also a woman leader of the social justice community, and together we were co-chairing this massive event, was pretty wonderful. But the ethnic diversity, the racial diversity that was also present, the working with Indigenous communities.
The First Nations drummers were there because we had invited them to be. It was more than important. It was vital for us that they be there.
So I'm just really proud of all of us that there was enough consciousness and effort and intention about making that part of the work that we were doing at that time.
There was about 300 workplaces shut down on Friday. We had community people on the picket lines. We had neighbors bringing people on the lines coffee and donuts.
And there were hundreds of workplaces that were cross-picketed on the shutdown day so that workers could stay home or go and picket at someone else's workplace and make the shutdown work.
There was a camaraderie that happened around that educated a lot of people around labor issues, I think. The city was like silent.
Very quiet.
But the only thing that was on the street were picketers going from one site to another, and the musicians who were, going to entertain people on the picket lines with their soundtrack.
The arts community, they did some extraordinarily creative and imaginative things.
It was like amazing to see this in the city of Toronto.
The rally was held on the Saturday following the shutdown. So we marched from Exhibition Grounds all the way up University Avenue to Queen's Park. And of course, we get there first. And people just kept coming and coming and coming.
They were up in trees. They were hanging off signs. They were everywhere.
We were there, and people had still not left Exhibition Stadium. The music was extraordinary. The diversity of performers, again, was brilliant. The speakers were absolutely amazing. Everyone from, the young woman representing students all the way up to senior union leaders like Bob White. It was just breathtaking. And the musicians, what can one say? I don't actually even know how we got Billy Bragg.
One of the highlights was when Billy sang "There Is Power in the Union," which is a song that every trade unionist knows and loves. It echoed down University Avenue.
There is power in a factory, power in the lands, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in a union.
There's so many people behind the scenes who did such an extraordinary job of organizing this thing. I'm just in awe of the courage and the brilliance. Did we actually gain anything? Mike Harris continued on to do terrible things, but we built a platform for future events.
At the end of it all, we ended up with trade unions who were getting involved in community issues like they never had before. And we ended up with community groups going out to picket lines like they never had before.
Something that remains a lesson today. I think with social media and various forms of technology, it's easy to become isolated, but at some point we need to come out of our houses and out of our workplaces and gather together to do this organizing together in an intentional, strategic way. There's a beautiful African proverb that I love, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think for me, that is an enduring message from the Metro Days of Action.
There's power in a union. Solidarity forever. Thank you.
All right. So I just want to take us back to just a few weeks ago. We were out on the street for Labor Day, and with our theme of rising up for a just recovery. And I gotta tell you, when we see what's happening, and even this week, I was one of the person who opened up at the OFL conference, and just to remind us that all the troubles that's around us, and it didn't just start since COVID. Before that, we have these, and the fire is burning. And I think I can speak for a lot of you that if I ask you if you're ready to fight, you know, a lot of you will say it's that fire is in your belly to go, but you're wondering who's coming, who's next, who's stepping up to the plate to make sure that we take this on. And I have to tell you, sisters and brothers, like I am so pissed off. Like when I see all the things that's coming at us, where we can't just sit by and waiting to see when this pandemic is going to be over, because the wolves in sheep clothing is out there and they're getting ready. They're looking for recovery. I remember just a few years ago, we were doing deputation. We were going out into the community, asking community group to come along with us. We were doing round tables with laborers and community. The minimum wage campaign was on the ground, and we were putting all these personal stories of exploitation of workers by employer. And just the nerve of it, after all that fight to win just a small list of employment standard and labor law, we watched the Ford family came along and pawn off all of this as if it was nothing. Pawn it off and snatch it back. And what do we see? I am just so over, you know, just seeing someone that could think that it's okay. What make Doug Ford think he's better? What make he think he's better than the worker who told their story of the employer who stole their gratuity? What make he think he's better than the worker that talk about all the things that employer done to them and no justice? That you're able to snatch away sick days, snatch away the wage increase, and then come back and dangle it because you need a vote. Sisters and brothers, I have to tell you, we got our work cut out for us. It's perfect that we're showing this video of 25 years ago, that we still got it. We still have it in us, and we have to when we get off of this meeting, we need to start within and start talking to your families and your neighbors that, you know what? We cannot let this two-faced person get away with what he's doing, exploiting one more time. This is not a gift for him to give. He stole this increase from workers, and now he's coming back dangling it for a vote. We gotta teach him a lesson, because even if we're hungry, we're proud, and we gotta show this man that we're not gonna tolerate it. Better than him show up and we got rid of him, and it's time that we stop wasting time with him. And with that, I'm gonna introduce our next speaker. And this with the, you know, come at the fitting time with the minimum wage fight that's happening. I'm gonna ask for Sister Pam Frey to address us tonight.
Thanks so much. It's so nice to be here and to see so many brothers, sisters, comrades. I'm gonna just share my screen when I make my remarks, because it's always more interesting to have something to look at. So just wanted to, I'm sure nobody needs reminding about, you know, the audacity of Premier Doug Ford to suddenly discover, you know, workers and workers' issues and to convince us that he's working for workers and that he actually cares, especially when this was the premier who sent workers into a global pandemic with fewer wages and fewer protections than they had going into than they had before he was elected premier. And so even though we should be very proud of the fact that we, by working together, solidarity with the union and non-union workers together, we were able to create conditions that made it impossible for Ford to not restore the minimum wage. And I hope all of you who have been out there collecting signatures on petitions, occupying offices, talking to your friends, sharing these issues, I hope you all feel like $1 million, because even under such an anti-worker government like Doug Ford, we are still able to extract gains, and we should feel very proud of that, and that should make us very hopeful. But as we know, Doug Ford cost workers a lot of lives, cost people a lot of illness and sickness, and Doug Ford has cost workers a lot of money. And it's really time, I think, for us to stand up and say, We are going to fight. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to fight Doug Ford, but we also want to elect decent work champions in the next election. And, you know, and I think, you know, we talk about how it's possible to fight and win. Together, we were able to get paid sick days back on the agenda. Together, we were able to restore the $15 minimum wage. But we know that people have lost a lot of money, that prices are still going up. And actually, even if you look at the wage increase for the minimum wage that was just announced, 4.5%, when you actually compare it to the skyrocketing prices over the past year, whether it's shelter, whether it's public transit, whether it's the cost of butter, for heaven's sakes, never mind gas and home fuel, we can see that the wages are falling further and further and behind. And that's why it really is time for a $20 minimum wage. And that's why it's going to be really important to elect decent work champions, and those candidates who are championing decent work, like Jagmeet Singh in the last federal election, who was calling for a $20 minimum wage, and like our allies provincially in the NDP, who are going to be coming forward with a bold agenda. Because I think that's the other thing that we should feel very confident about, is that the fact that we now have 2 private members' bill on the tables for paid sick days, both of which are calling for 10 permanent paid sick days, plus an additional 2 weeks, thanks to Peggy Sattler and the NDP for having the bold vision and the confidence to amplify workers' demands. That's made the Liberals scramble to put a similar bill on the table. The fact that we've been able to do this tells us that a very big appetite and a very big vision for decent work is possible. And that's why, sisters and brothers, between now and June 2nd, we need to fight for and win a big agenda for decent work, a $20 minimum wage as quickly as possible to make up for the wages that Doug Ford stole. And we want to make sure that there's absolutely no confusion about who is going to be the decent work champion and for voting for the NDP. The last thing I want to say is that it's not going to happen accidentally. And I think we have to build people's confidence to fight for the decent work and decent wages. And we have to fight to make sure that our elected leaders feel like they can put forward the biggest vision possible. And that means starting to organize now, not waiting for 30 days before the election. And I'd just like to end off by inviting everybody here to come to the next Decent Work organizing meeting that's co-hosted by the Ontario Federation of Labour, that brings together union and non-union workers together to make a united front to fight for the best, biggest possible vision for decent work. And again, I want to thank all of you for making this possible, because we should feel ownership of this victory. Of course, we know that Doug Ford is doing this for cynical, opportunistic reasons, but I want to quote Butila Karposh, who's the NDP MPP for Parkdale High Park, who put it very well. She said, we know this government is doing this for opportunistic reasons, and as she said, she doesn't even care if that's the reason. But what she does care about is doing right by workers and making sure that they have the labor laws and the minimum wages they need to provide decent work, safe working conditions for all workers. And when we fight for a $20 minimum wage, we also want to make sure that we're fighting to end all the sub-minimum wage rates. Again, a huge, tremendous victory to get rid of the sub-minimum wage rate for liquor servers, but we still have work to do to make sure that migrant workers are not excluded from employment minimum wage laws and employment standards protections. And we want to make sure that students under the age of 18 are also not given a sub-minimum wage rate, especially when we know that student wages are such an important pillar contributing to household incomes and preventing those households from falling further below the poverty line. So I feel like we have, momentum on our side. We have the solidarity of people across the province, so much so that now Doug Ford is having to pivot in this direction. So we should feel proud of what we've done together so far. We should feel confident.
Miss Singleton, we
should feel confident about what we're doing. And let's, as everyone has said, let's make sure that we elect people like Andrew Horvath and the NDP, and making sure that they are carrying forth a vision that we are going to work for, that we're going to fight for, and not just before the election, but also after the election. Because make no mistake, the business class does not roll over when we win a concession for the working class. And if we get an NDP government elected, we know we're going to have to stay mobilized, defend that agenda, and make sure that we beat down the big business backlash times 10. And sisters and brothers, with paid sick days on the agenda federally and provincially in BC, from BC to Nova Scotia with wages rising. There's no doubt in my mind that we can do it, but let's make sure that this June 2nd, we elect a government that's going to work for workers. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. And I hope you can all join us at the next organizing meeting, November 16th from 7 p.m. To 9 p.m. We'll see you there, I hope.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy that you're here with us, and just to help us to rattle up and put some heat back into us, right? It's getting a little bit chilly, but we need to get up and push back. We can't give another inch to this man to get away. He's already doing a recovery phase right now, and we got to show him that this is not okay. It's disrespectful, and we're not gonna take it. This afternoon, he was announcing extra beds for senior. They were not on floor before. It's just disrespectful and greedy of him to do that. So let us get ready. I'm gonna introduce our next speaker, Jill Andrew, NDP member of Provincial Parliament from Toronto, St. Paul. She's the first queer Black person to be elected to the Ontario legislature, and who is also the culture critic, heritage critic, and women issues critic for the official opposition. Sister Andrew, welcome.
Thank you so much, Toronto York Region Labour Council, for having me. I'm giving you all high fives through the screen, certainly hoping that one day soon we can be all together. I'm gonna jump right in. And you know what, Andrea, I'm starting with you. I just want to say congratulations. Congratulations for being the first Black woman, the first woman of color to sit in that position right there. And I know how much this means to you, your family, your community, to workers across Ontario. I want to say thank you very, very, very much, because as the women's issues critic, I know how disproportionately women have been impacted by pay inequities, sexual violence, gender-based violence, harassment in the workplace, lack of representation, especially whether it's in retail, in hospitality, in jobs that are so-called not jobs that women should be in. I just want to say thank you for your leadership. Thank you very, very much. And of course, to the entire council, thank you for standing up for workers each and every day. So you've called for a just pandemic recovery that recognizes the pandemic has not been equal in its impact. We know workers were the most impacted: Black, Indigenous, racialized women, 2S LGBTQIA+ women, people with disabilities, and injured workers, quite frankly, have been some of the most impacted during this pandemic. And you have advocated staunchly for all of them. You're advocating for racial justice in your Yes It Matters campaign. Again, recognizing that nowhere is free from systemic discrimination, quite frankly, not even in our movements. Whether that be labor, whether that be climate, whether that be racial justice, there are systemic issues everywhere that we have to have the courage, frankly, to face so we can dismantle. So thank you for your work. It is up to the government as well, because I don't subscribe to neoliberal bootstrap ideologies. We can work hard to do things. We can show up every day, but we need a government to show up for us as well. Even our heroes like you all at Labour Council. You need legislation to support you in doing the work that you're doing, of course. And also climate justice. We've talked a lot about the pandemic, but make no mistake that the climate crisis is inextricably linked with the pandemic. And frankly, that was a pandemic even long before. It is a crisis, and one that we must address, and one that impacts the same vulnerable folks that I'm talking about. Overall, this 18 months, is it 19 months? It's been tough. There's no question. It's been very, very hard. You know, workers have been made to feel demoralized in many cases. You know, when you have a government that puts out a bill called Working for Workers Act, but it doesn't address injured workers. It doesn't address the health conditions, the working conditions, the abysmal pay some workers are doing during a pandemic. It cannot be a Working for Workers Act bill. As workers in this province, I know this government has not eased up on workers. In fact, it has made it harder even during the pandemic. So for you to take the time on top of everything else, your personal lives, navigating your own lives. I know many of us live in intergenerational households. Many of you all have little ones. You're juggling a lot. To have all that on your plate and still take time to organize, to inspire working people across our province to want to get involved, to want to use their democratic voice, to fight for the Ontario we need. Frankly, it inspires me. It motivates me to keep going. Because I'm not going to lie to any of you on this call. Sometimes I look around and I say, what am I doing here? It's a twilight zone. You know, the government's not listening. They're not consulting. They're not leaning on the lived experience of their constituents to help them find their way. They're listening to their buddies, hailing people up in the house as frontline healthcare heroes, and high five to the teachers, high five to the education workers, high five to every person, while the policies are speaking a different tune. So next year, June 2nd, we have a big day. That is a day when I strongly believe that Ontarians across this province are going to rise up. They will no longer be drinking the Kool-Aid of a Ford government. They will no longer be mesmerized and romanticized and bamboozled by a liberal government that makes promises upon promises upon promises and had 15 years to accomplish those promises. And frankly, didn't, because make no mistake, let's just put this out here. The long-term care crisis, PSWs, predominantly racialized women, I'm going to say it, Black and racialized women, and others working as frontline healthcare workers, going back to SARS, going back to COVID, in COVID, we're still in COVID. They warned governments previously of the understaffing, the under-resourcing. And it was not listened to. And that is by choice, people. We need a government that listens to our people. The Ontario NDP is the Labour Party. It's the Labour movement. It is the party of the Labour movement. I'm proud to represent the interests of workers. I'm proud to represent the people who in my riding get on the Eglinton 32 at all hours of the day and night on packed buses to get to work. People who I see on the bus and on the train with their lunch in a brown bag. With people who are making ends meet, but would like to have childcare that was reasonable so they could participate in the economy, so they could feel comfortable in those jobs. I represent workers who need to have the right to speak up in their jobs, who should be able to declare racism. They should be able to mention that they're being harassed without fear of reprisal. I represent workers who have a right to go to the bathroom when making deliveries, when driving us from point A to B. And I represent workers who, as creative as they may be, as resourceful as they may be, as hardworking as they may be, they shouldn't have to be jigging and juggling 10, 5, 4, 3 jobs to make ends meet. I want to say thank you very, very much for all of you for advocating so hard for that $15 minimum wage. And I won't repeat, because what Pam said was spot on. Batilla said it perfectly. But make no mistake, that was requested in 2016. That was requested in 2016 under the Liberal government. So don't forget to check when it magically became an election item. Do the math of the dates. And now, woo, it's another election item. And while we know it is a step in the right direction, we also know that inflation rates, don't get me started on housing, that's a whole other talk. In Toronto, in York, it's just not enough. Coming out of the pandemic, we have a real opportunity to decide what kind of Ontario we want to live in. We are at a critical juncture where we can either rebuild with a party that we can trust, a party that you know and I know is made up of us, everyday people just trying to do the best for themselves, for their families, for communities, again, not for their buddies, not for developers that are building condos in every one of our communities like weeds, with no inclusionary zoning, with no talk of a real affordable housing. Don't even start on supportive housing and transition housing or sustainably built housing. We're talking about everyday people. While the pandemic brought the burnout of workers to the surface, the government didn't pay attention to the widening gap between workers and big box businesses, workers and billion-dollar employers. And we see that, as I said earlier, in the kind of legislation this government puts forward, like that piece of legislation, Working for Workers Act. You know, the government promised an iron ring around its seniors. Failed on that. Just the other day, Andrea Horvath asked them to legislate safe zones, essentially put an iron ring around our workers, our heroes, our schools, our small businesses that have been trying to get by, you know? And the government said no to protecting, again, people in our community who need protection now more than ever. So on June 2nd, let's work together to build the change we wish to see. And I'm not gonna, you know, dress things up. We have a lot of work ahead of us. I guarantee you, the Liberals will knock on your door and they will make promise after promise after promise. And they will sprinkle the strategic voting dust at your doorstep. Don't fall for it. There is 40 of us official opposition members in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. Our party, the NDP, has been the only party in Ontario's history to elect enough Black MPPs to form the Ontario Black Caucus. And yes, I am the first queer Black person elected into the legislature here in Ontario and reportedly across our nation. But make no mistake, there is room for you. There is room for all of us. There's 40 of us. We need to build. We need to build those numbers. And we cannot do it without the labor movement. We cannot do it without you. We just simply cannot do it without you. And I don't want to do it without you. As a QP 3903 member, an OSSTF District 12 member, I know the power, I know the support, I personally know the love of having a union that has your back. And we need to know that we have a government that will respect unionized workplaces, will promote unionized workplaces, will recognize them to be the safest, the most empowering for our workers here in Ontario. Places where workers can build a legacy, where they're not just feeling like they're a number on the assembly line. Because I'm certain many of us have had that feeling before, and maybe some of us still do. So I want to say thank you so much for having me here. I have been a politician now for 3 years and a bit, and I can tell you, I'm not an armchair politician. There are many armchair politicians in the legislature. I don't even know if some of them actually speak to constituents, actually speak to their community members. We bring lived experience, we bring your stories into the legislature, and we also have solutions. And that is what we'll continue to do as your official opposition until we make government, an NDP government led by Andrea Horwath, next June, June 2nd, 2022. Join me. Don't be late. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so up next, I'm going to ask for Rochelle from Labor Community Services, Rochelle Hanway, to give us a update or debrief on the United Way breakfast.
Thank you, Andrea. So hi, everyone. Good evening. The 2021 President's Breakfast was proudly put together by the joint efforts of the Peel, Toronto, and York Region Labour Councils in partnership with United Way Greater Toronto to support the United Way 2021 Community Recovery fundraising campaign. This year's event theme was Rise Up for a United Recovery. Thank you to all those who attended and supported the event. It was inspiring to see everyone come together and hear from labor and community leaders. As you can see here on the screen, if you missed the event and would like to hear their messages, please visit laborcommunityservice.ca/UnitedWay. With the Toronto and York Region Labour Council being a founding partner of United Way Greater Toronto, there's a continued emphasis on how your support directly impacts 280 community agencies and the well-being and recovery of union members and our communities. This year, United Way Greater Toronto's goal is to raise $105 million. Our event goal was to raise $20,021 for 2021. And we are happy to share that we are close to our goal and we are still getting donations coming in. So you can still help and make a donation. Every dollar counts. While many of us may feel that the worst of the pandemic is over, many of our friends, neighbors, and members are still feeling its significant impact. As we know, the pandemic disproportionately impacted those experiencing poverty, many of whom in low-income neighborhoods and are racialized or from other equity-seeking groups. During the crisis, food insecurity has been exacerbated, layoffs have skyrocketed for low-wage workers, the housing crisis has gotten worse and mental health is worsening. The three critical areas in 2021 are: 1, meeting basic fundamental needs, tackling local poverty and discrimination and inequity at its root, and building an equitable recovery. The United Way Labor Liaisons are available to help answer any of your questions on how to get more involved and support you during the entire campaign season and throughout the year. You can get in contact with myself, Rochelle Himaya, or Marcia Lopez, and our emails will be up on the next slide. You could help in 3 ways. Number 1, if you don't already have a workplace campaign, going on, you can start one. It's a great opportunity to get everyone together, build up support, and give back. Number 2, you can sign up for a payroll deduction through your workplace campaign. This makes giving easy and automatic, and any amount is greatly appreciated. If you give $1,200 or more a year, you become a United Way leadership donor. And number 3, please visit the United Way's website at unitedwaygt.org/donate to see the many ways you can get involved and give. Again, if you need any more information, please contact myself or Marcia as your United Way labor liaisons. And we're here to help all year round as we encourage you to keep United Way at top of mind as labor's charity of choice. Thank you everyone for your support and have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
Okay, up for CLC report. Heather, are you still here?
I sure am. Thank you, President Andrea, and good evening, everyone. I did get to see a lot of your faces over the past week at the OFL convention. It just wrapped up as of today with a lot of lively debate on the resolutions, and several recommendations were put forward on the action plan in the lead up to the provincial election. The action plan has multiple pillars, with labor working alongside community, a ground game in every riding, a digital strategy, and much more. But it's going to take each and every one of us now, as MPP Jill Andrew was saying, to make this happen. The time is now before the election to, if you're not involved with your NDP riding association, or if you need any supports, I know that there's a ton of people at the Toronto New York Region Labor Council that can get you involved today, because that's the power that we need in order to see a real labor government, which is an NDP government. Also very pleased to announce that Patty Coates was re-elected as president, Ahmed Gaid re-elected as secretary treasurer, and Janice Vogt-Dawson as the executive vice president. To see the work that they've done for our labor community and for workers across this province in the last 2 years has been truly inspiring through very tough times, and I'm really excited to see what they'll do in the lead up to this election with the work of so many of us. And just to comment on some other things that have come up at this meeting, but the minimum wage announcement is yet another example of the Conservatives trying to talk friendly about how they care about workers, but all of us know what their track record is like, and that they're just trying to pander to get votes. But in the same vein, to every person who filled an office, did a campaign, a phones app, this is your victory tonight, or a couple days ago, because this is how we got here. And just as we saw from Pam's lovely photos, that now we're looking at $20, because we know that $15 is not a living wage here in Ontario, anywhere in this province. So we continue that fight ahead. And while Ford is saying that he's there for workers, you look at all of the other ways that he hasn't been there for Ontarians, including no concrete signs to get the childcare agreement with the federal government so women can have a path back to the workforce. There's been no negotiating about a universal pharmacare agreement when workers are having to choose between groceries and their medicine. And, as far as fair wages and worker protections, we know that the track record there just doesn't stand. So I hope that with that announcement that we know who the true, people who brought that into place are, and it's the people who are here tonight. Bringing it back to the federal table, there is a new federal cabinet that was put into place since I last saw all of you, and the CLC has been working, as well as our new president, B. Brusk, very hard in advocating that this cabinet is working on building an inclusive and equitable recovery. With women so disproportionately impacted by the economic crisis of the pandemic, it's not enough that Trudeau has only, for him to only put in gender parity. The cabinet must make concrete actions to address the significant setbacks of the women's labor force in participation in the last 18 months. And that includes immediately implementing childcare agreements in every province and territory. This is something that B. Brusk talked in length with the Deputy Prime Minister about a week and a half ago. Also, with the high cost of housing, it was a huge federal election issue, and it's a topic of conversation whenever anyone here meets that lives in Ontario. So, the CLC is welcoming the new creation of a Minister of Housing. That is a step in the direction to get the appropriate amount of attention to the crisis that we're in when it comes to housing. We're also welcoming the creation of the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and we'll be looking to Carolyn Bennett to urgently address the opioid crisis, because we know that that is a crisis that has been going on for a very long time and not gone anywhere because of this pandemic. If anything, it's only worsened. And finally on this one, to be working very closely with the Minister of Labor, with the priorities being on extending, fixing the broken EI system and also ensuring all workers have a path to unionization. And on the recovery benefits front, I'm sure a lot of folks here will know that on October 23rd, the Canada Recovery Benefit was taken away. It was not extended. So about 800,000 people who live in Canada were relying on that, and they no longer have access to any of those funds to get them through the pandemic that is not over. So the CLC is fighting to see that re-implemented at this point, because what's left right now just simply isn't enough for people to get by. So with all of these issues on the stage, I wanted to just do a gentle reminder that each year the CLC does a lobby week. It's usually a lobby day, but last year we did a lobby week because we were doing it all online. It was incredibly successful in Ontario. We lobbied about 70 MPs, which was massive, and the Toronto and York Region Labour Council did so much amazing work to connect people who live in the riding to their MPP. You're provided with notes, but it's really about sharing your story, sharing your lived experience of what you're going through and why the policies of the federal government affect your day-to-day. So if you're interested even slightly, or you have a friend or family member who would be interested in partaking in that, please feel free to reach out to Susan and Andrea, and we'll make sure to make a plan to get you all the information that you need. So that's it for me tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, up next, council project and committee report. Okay, I don't see anyone for that, so we'll move on.
I'd like to give a quick report.
Steve. Go ahead.
I'd like to give a quick report from the Labor Education Center. Later this month, LEC in collaboration with the York Region Parents of Black Children and the still being developed York Region Community Benefits Network is going to be holding recruitment events for Black youth to join the building trades November 15th and 29th. And I don't have the link for that, but maybe we'll be able to put it in the upcoming issues of the e-blast from the Labor Council, or you can get in touch with me directly at the Labor Education Center. And the other thing I wanted to report on that we're working on at the Labor Education Center is a training program for green building operators. So this is meant to be an entry-level positions into working in commercial and industrial buildings as hopefully working on HVAC systems, heating and cooling. If there are any delegates out there who are working in this area or in these trades, we'd love to hear from you and to help us develop the program for this. And again, if you could reach me, I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to union report. And I believe we have Brother Derek Richmond from Canadian Union of Postal Workers, and he's also going to introduce a guest speaker with him.
I actually don't see him on.
Uh-huh.
Derek,
Okay.
do you want to raise your hand? Oh,
Okay.
he's not on.
Okay. So in the meantime, any other union report? Please raise your hand. Oh, wow. Okay, so so far I'm not seeing any hand for union report. So I think we are at the end of our meeting. So
Andrea, I do see that Melissa Sobers has her hand up.
Sorry, Melissa. Sorry, I can't see you. Go ahead.
It's okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I just wanted to give an update of our sister local in Ottawa.
Melissa, before you go any further, can you introduce yourself and your union?
Sure. Sorry about that. I'm Melissa Sobers, and I'm from Unite Here Local 75, the Hotel Workers Union. So we have our sister local in Ottawa, Local 261, who since March, the Sheraton Ottawa had fired 70 workers. And I'm happy to say with the help of the Ottawa Labor Council over there, we were able just as of recently, just this week, we were able to come to an agreement and get those 70 workers back to work. So thanks for everyone in Toronto who supported from afar. And yeah, I think we did a pretty good job at the Labor Council over there in Ottawa, helping out, coming to the picket lines, getting the message out, getting labor and community allies on board. So just wanted to give that update.
Okay. And is there any more hands? I haven't seen. No one else? Okay.
I don't see any hands up.
All right. So maybe just a quick one that Melissa did a report, and for just to announce that last week Thursday, they also had one of their picket line at the Hilton downtown. So for most of you who already know, since last year with this pandemic, where at least 95% of hotel workers that was laid off out of their job, and slowly there's just a few of them coming back in, and the union invited us to come out and support as they send the message to the hotel sector that they're not going to stand by as they take away the job. And a lot of these sector, they're talking about recovery similar to us, but they're looking at how they can reopening these hotels. The guests start coming back in, but less workers come in to do the job. So, so stay tuned. The Labor Council is reaching out to, and we plan to reach out to all of you, to your unions, and ask whenever there is a fight on the ground, for each union to send at least 2 of their members with their flags to go out and for solidarity support, because we definitely need that. So wherever the call is, we are going to ask you put your mask on, and whatever support you can give, let us start doing that, because these business can think that we're just afraid to come out and they get away with taking away more from workers. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for coming out and staying on for the duration of the meeting. And I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Can I get a motion from someone? Thank you, Judith, and thank you, Jinky. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned. And before you go off, we're going to play our another video for the rally, and this is another international one. So if you're able to watch it, please stay.
This November, world leaders will meet in Glasgow at the Global Climate Talks COP26. So far, governments have done too little, too late.
Justice won't be handed to us by world leaders or delivered by corporations.
Only we can imagine and build the future that works for all of us.
The solutions we need already exist.
But our leaders seem to lack the political will to act.
We're bringing movements together from across the world to build the power for system change.
From Indigenous struggles to trade unions,
from racial justice
group to youth strikers.
Wherever you are in the world, now is the time to join Movement for Climate Justice.
On the 6th of November, come out onto the streets for the Global Day of Action for Climate Justice.
Join or organise mobilisations across the world.
On the 7th to the 10th of November, join the People's Summit for Climate Justice.
Discuss, learn and strategise for system change.
Online from anywhere in the world or in person in Glasgow.
The era of injustice is over. We need climate justice now.
Okay. All right. So I hope to see you all on Saturday at the rally. Stay safe.
Good night.